like it or not, in this career, no matter how good you are, no matter how much business you do, no matter how much money you make, at a certain point, there is going to be a time for each of us where we go, you know what, I'm over it. I'm totally burned out. I don't want to do this anymore. And at that point, you sort of have options, right? Option one is if you've saved some money, maybe you can retire on that money and take little pieces of it, but you don't know how long you're going to live. So that's a little awkward because you're now having a discussion with yourself that's like, well, am I going for a big quality of life or am I cheering for a short life? Right? Which is, I mean, it's just a little awkward. Or you can put money in the stock market and just pray that the stock market doesn't go down. But the challenge is when you retire, the stock market may or may not be up. I mean, did anyone see what happened with the Robin Hood thing a couple of weeks ago? Did anyone see that? Short version of the story is there was a stock that all the investors were, all the institutional guys were sort of betting against and driving the price down. And a couple of like freelance guys came in and bid it way up. And my thought on it at the time was that neither the very high valuation nor the very low valuation, neither of these were actually indicative of what was happening with the company actually. And so it was frustrating to me because I look at it and I go, you know what, the stock market is actually just fluff, right? Like, I mean, that's my professional opinion, is that very few of these companies are actually based on anything real at all. And it's very frustrating if you are making an investment that could or could not go down based on how people feel at the time. Like, that's me. I just think it's really terrifying. So what I've chosen to do about that is I've chosen to put my money in real estate. And I've chosen to do that primarily because I feel like I can understand it, and I feel like I can sort of control how I buy it, right? I can't control whether the market goes up or down, but I can control the type of return that I'm getting on the investment. And to me, that's a pretty powerful thing. Like, when it comes to my financial security and what I want for my family, it's super control free. Like, I don't want whether or not my family gets payments if I get hurt or I die unexpectedly. I don't want that to be in anyone's hands other than my own. And I look at it and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to control what I can control, right? So building a portfolio out for myself has become one of the major initiatives of my life over the past 5 years. It's just been one of the things that's been more important to me than anything else. So I look at it, and I look at the course of my career, and I would say probably the first 5 years of my career, I worked a lot with investors, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. I took a lot of pride for many, many years in that I made a lot of money for my investors, and Alexandria knows. Yeah, there's something to be said. Like, you want to find something off market, I'm your person. I can find you things with big spreads. I can make you whatever money you want. Like, that was my deal for a while, right? Like, I really took a lot of pride in that. And still to this day, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I've added amazing value to all my investors' lives, right? But there came a point where I started thinking about this just a little bit differently and being like, you know what? If I'm going to add amazing value to people's lives from here on out, there's going to be an actual hierarchy, right? Like, at first, like, my first priority now is my husband and my son. So if we have a home run, is there a way that I can create value in their lives? Like, whether my son gets to go to college, and now daughter, is deeply important to me, right? Like, whether or not they're in a position where if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, if they're exposed, is deeply important to me. So that's the first part of the hierarchy. After that, straight up, it's the people on my team. I'm like, is there an amazing way that we can find a property for them or one of their clients off market, right? And then after that, we send everything out to the investor list and we say, here you go, is there an amazing way that we could create value in your lives? Because we are fortunate enough now that we have really good deal flow, and so not everything can I personally buy or my team buy, like it can be available to everybody. But I've shifted my perspective on this pretty significantly from Isabelle of 5 years ago, who was running around like doing deal days and making some pretty heavy hitters, some pretty good money, to, okay, what is the mission of my financial life, right? Like part of the mission of my financial life is to create a certain amount of value for my children, for my team, you know, for the community too. But as agents, if we're not actually looking at how can we build wealth for ourselves, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice. I heard the National Association of Realtors has said that only 16% of agents actually own any properties at all other than their primary residence. And I would be curious to know, like, what is their strategy for investing, right? Because I think we all know of agents who have had amazing, prolific careers, who have made over 6 figures all of those years, and they have nothing, right? Like, there are 2 main ways that you can find a really good deal. The first way is on market, the second way is off market. If you're going on market, traditionally what I've done is I've gone into the MLS on a very specific day. Usually I do it Thursday or Friday because the majority of listings are coming up those days. And I look within a city, both at site built and at manufactured, and I sort the MLS, who has the lowest price and who has the lowest price per square foot. From there, I'm doing a CMA on the 3 of these that make the most sense, right? So lowest price per square foot, I'm seeing what of this is absolutely the best deal, and that's the one I'm focusing on. The challenge with that strategy right now is if something truly is a good deal, you're probably gonna get 10 offers on it. So you're gonna be in a fist fight, right? The one that I'm liking a little bit more now for on-market properties is also searching by days on market. So what has been in Prescott, that's a site-built house for the longest amount of time, you're probably going to have a little less of a brutal fight in that case. I'm going to pull the 3 that have been on market the longest. I'm going to do a CMA and figure out where I think they should be for me or my investor to make money, and I'm going to make an offer at that price. Is it going to make me the most popular girl in town? Maybe not, right? But ultimately, if someone has been on market for 6 months, the reality is they might look at an offer where somebody who has been on market for 1 day maybe wouldn't, right? So ultimately, if you're looking for deals on market, I think you're going to have more success going with people who have been on the market for a minute and have wondered what is wrong with their property or their price, who have at least motivation enough to list. I'm having a discussion with them. Now bear in mind, from an investor standpoint, when you're making offers, you need to make a critical mass of offers in order to get a yes across the board. So what tends to happen sometimes is people go, yeah, but Isabelle, I've made 3 offers and everybody said no. And I go, well, you've got to make in wholesale at least 10 offers to people in person before one says yes. And so until you've made 10 offers out of the MLS, then we can't even say that the strategy isn't working. And really, until you've made 20 or 30, you don't have great data on whether or not it is working, right? So I know that the idea of making 30 offers is sort of like, yes, but in this market, that's actually where you start finding that people start saying yes to you. You have to have a critical number of inquiries even to get there to begin with. All right, let's talk off market, because actually where the best deals are coming from right now, the ones that we're finding from a wholesale side, are all off market. That's where I'm finding the very best deals. And there are a couple of main ways that you can reach out to people depending on what your style is, right? Everybody has things that they like, everybody has things that they do not like. So number one is you can have a network of wholesalers. The next is calling. So if you have traditionally called in your business, a voice-to-voice contact, from my perspective, is still one of the most effective ways of figuring out what is possible with a seller. In that case, the call looks like, hey, my name is Isabelle. I have a couple of cash buyers who are interested in purchasing 2 or 3 more properties this month. Would you ever consider selling your house? Right? It's very, very straightforward. It also has the added benefit of not being against the law, right? Like, the further and further we go here, the more and more we're seeing that people are sort of getting busted for calling the do not call list, for making multiple solicitation phone calls. If you're actually calling someone with an offer, that is not considered solicitation. It is called just calling Alexandra and seeing if she's interested in selling because I want to give her money. That's a totally different, you have a purpose for the call. Does that make sense? So it actually has an added bonus. If you're on the phones regularly right now, this actually is a strategy you should consider employing anyway, because you're less likely to get dinged if somebody makes a complaint on you. Cool? The next way is texting. So the best software that I am aware of right now for text is Launch Control. And the reason that it is better is because it is sending out individualized texts that are allowing you to send something that is totally differentiated to Barry, Alexandra, Jennifer, Nikki, right? Like, which also makes it legal, again. So the way that you do it is you put together a text, hey Jennifer, I'm a cash offer, I'd like to make, a purchase of your house on ABC Main Street or whatever, right? But then I would have certain words that were interchangeable, and the software would use those interchangeable words to sub them in and out, so that Barry, Alexandra, Jennifer, and Nikki all receive a totally different text. Because everybody receives a totally different text, it doesn't get flagged by the phone company as being a mass text blast, and so your receipt rate is way higher. And again, I am allowed to text a person and say, hey, would you consider selling? What I'm not allowed to do is drop a mass amount of spam on people. So because of that, it's actually legal, which is cool. Last, but certainly not least, is mail. So I'm actually loving mail right now. And you can send anything from, hey, I'm an agent in the area, I'm looking for sellers for my buyers, would you consider just letting a few buyers through? All the way to, hey, here is an offer on your property. All the way to, hey, I'm a cash investor, I'd like to build my portfolio, do you have anything you'd like to sell? I have sent all of those, and I will tell you, every single one of them works, right? We have sent them in cases where we're looking for something specific for a buyer. We've sent them in cases where we're trying to get really good properties on wholesale properties. We've sent them when there's something specific I want to acquire for my own portfolio, right? So mail works incredibly well. It also has the benefit of being really time efficient, so it doesn't take up all your time. The challenge is going to be a little more expensive because you're paying for printing, a stamp. If you're paying somebody to collate them, it's a little more expensive, but it's very, very effective, and done at scale, you can get a good number of leads coming your direction. On those off-market properties, the key from my perspective is actually to have a really good list, right? Like, the average person isn't looking at selling their house for a discount. Typically, when you're selling your house at a discount, there's a reason why, right? You have some sort of story that actually makes you need to get the cash more quickly. Maybe the house is distressed in some way, or maybe it just needs a lot of cleanup and you don't have the money to do the cleanup. These tend to be kind of the big reasons why. So I like to purchase a list to target any of those calls, texts, or mail, right? So I think the best lists in Yavapai County right now are the probate list. The probate list is hard to get. It's sort of like seeing Bigfoot. So to get it, you actually have to go to the county courthouse and ask them for it. But it does exist. They will lead you to a room with some boxes, and you copy down the addresses. But given the age of our population, it's a robust list. So probate list, tax lien list, massive. I think there's 1,600 people as of Friday who have tax default, just haven't paid taxes on their property. We found some of our very best deals out of the tax lien list. Also, if you're not paying the taxes on your property, one of two things is probably going on. Either you paid cash for the house and you just forgot, totally possible, or you have a level of apathy towards the house that might indicate that you'd sell it at a discount, right? So the divorce list, the bankruptcy list, the vacant house list. So the vacant house list is people who have their utilities turned off. So I've got a house, inside it there are no utilities. It's a huge indication that it might be vacant. So tax lien list, you can actually pull from Rebo Gateway, it's a software, or from Real Estate Worldwide. Divorce and bankruptcy, same thing. Vacant home list only comes from Real Estate Worldwide. 30, 60, or 90-day late and pre-foreclosure list, right? Like, there are still a fair number of people who are behind on their mortgage for whatever reason. So we don't have a huge number of foreclosures right now because of the moratorium on evictions. But we do still have people who are late. So as of Friday, I think there are 117 people on the 30, 60, 90-day late. There's 6 in foreclosure, right? So it gives you just a larger list that you can potentially follow up with. Rentals right now, it's a great list. So for everyone who's unfamiliar, over the last year, landlords have had more uncertainty in their life than they've ever had before, right? Previously, whether or not you were going to get paid was only a function of whether or not your tenant paid you. And if they didn't, you could get them out in Arizona, you could get them out in 10 days, really, really quick. But with the moratorium on eviction, for the first time in the state of Arizona, I might be looking at not getting rid of my guy for 6 months. Do you know what it does to a landlord, particularly one with a loan on the property, if he doesn't get paid for 6 months? It's an unbelievable problem, right? And particularly if you are older and you have been looking at selling your property for an extended period of time, you kind of go, I'm tired of being a landlord. I've held these properties 20, 30 years. I have 10. And I've been on the fence about selling them. I sold more properties last year from people who had portfolios and were just tired of the uncertainty and wanted one cash payout than anything else. Because they're like, I don't want to do showings. I don't want to bother my tenants. I just want someone to come buy the portfolio. I was like, great, here's the fixed cost for the portfolio. They were like, fantastic, this is exactly what I want. And then we sold the properties within the portfolio and just gave them a lump sum, right? But there are tons of people who are sort of in that boat, who are like, yeah, I am tired of being a landlord, and now I face uncertainty like I've never faced before. If you would have told anybody 3 years ago that the federal government would tell them that the contract that they had with their tenant that was absolutely legal and absolutely binding would not be legal and not be binding, I think most landlords would be like, you are kidding me, this sort of undermines property rights in America, right? But nevertheless, you know, the laws changed, they were what they were, and what was a really solid investment is now not. So, landlords, it's a great list. It's a great list. There are tons of landlords who were sort of thinking about selling, who now are like, yeah, I think I'm done. Not only that, but who knows what is likely going to happen with tax rates over the next couple of years.
Can we go up?
They're probably going to go up, yeah. The current administration has been pretty open about the fact that they'd love to see tax rates go up on everything. So if a landlord has been on the fence about selling, capital gains could be a factor for them. So yeah, rentals are a great one, and you can just find them in the tax records. All right, how to make sure that anything I purchase would actually make money. So this is the other thing that I chat with people about a lot, right? If I buy something, how do I know it's really a good deal? Particularly if it's dirty or weird or whatever, right?
And here.
What?
I'm just kidding. I said, I'm sitting right here.
But I think most people can agree, like, if they found something, inherently they could tell at a certain price whether it was a good deal, right? If I found a house in Stone Ridge today for $100,000, almost no matter what it was wrong with it, it's a good deal, right? Same thing with Granville. If I found a house in Granville for $100,000, who here wouldn't buy that deal?
Mm-hmm.
What if animals had been hoarded inside? Would you
Don't
still
matter.
buy it? So would I. What if, what if it was a weird, strange color? Would you still buy it? So would I. I totally buy it. But not only that, I would do it tap dance while I was buying it. You know what I mean? So I think everybody can tell at a certain point if something is a good deal. And then from there, it just becomes, where is that line? Would everyone agree with that? Okay, cool. So let's look at how I calculate whether or not I want to buy something. And originally I was like, we're just going to use random numbers. And then I was like, no, we're going to play with live ammo. So can everyone look at, this is the email that I sent for our deal that's going out today. So we have a deal on the wholesale side that's going out to our investor list today. It's 531 First Street, right? It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1157 square feet, 0.159 acres, is a 1949 build. The price we're selling it for is $187.5. ARV is $250. It needs new flooring, probably a new roof. I haven't seen any leaking, but the roof is like 30 years old, so it's probably at the end of its useful life. And it probably needs like a handful of other things that are going to cost you, right? So I said, all right, I think the sub cost is $25,000 based on what I know about it. So everyone pull out this gray paper. So this is the exact equation. So this is going to be if I'm keeping it as a rental property, which, by the way, was my first impulse. I came home, I told my husband, hey, I have this place locked up on Dameron Track, like maybe we want to keep it as a rental, and I liked it because it's a site-built house, and potentially we could just refinance it and have rent pay for it, and I was like, we can get a house for free, honey. So that was my original plan, right? So you run it through a calculator. Purchase price is $187,500, fix-up costs are $25,000, total investment is $212,500. Gross monthly rent on this one, I bet I could get $1,500 a month. It's got 3 bedrooms, it's in Prescott, it's a site-built house. So that annual number would be $18,000. Does everyone understand how I got that? It's just 1,500 times 12. That's it. So then I take into account a couple of things. One, what's going to be the annual cost of insurance? It's going to be about $500. Two, what are property taxes? I just filled in 1,500 here. In this case, there's actually no HOA, but let's say there were $100 a month, $1,200. Management fees. My management company charges 8%, so I went ahead and plugged that in. I always put in a month of repairs and a month of vacancy because I never want to be caught unawares, right? So that cash flow, the new cash flow, is $10,360. Does everyone see how I got there? 18,000 less the potential expenses equals 10,360. So what is my cap rate? Cap rate in this case is going to be my cash flow divided by my total investment, 212. My husband and I, because we're crazy, don't love having rental properties that don't have double-digit return on investments. So, how did I feel about that cap rate?
No good.
I was like, we're wholesaling it! The other thing was, on this one, my husband said, well, I don't really want to manage a project right now, and this one looks like there might be a couple of things, right? So, if you personally, or your investors, are looking at a buy-sell decision, they're probably running exactly this math. They're probably saying, what's my purchase price? How much is it going to cost to fix up? What are my other expenses? And then at the end, they're looking at a cap rate. So when you're talking to an investor who says, hey, Barry, I'm looking at buying a rental property that's going to have a cap rate of at least 6%, say, they're looking at that. So if you can plug in a property into this formula that's going to get them to that 6% number, chances are they're going to buy it. And what I've always loved about working with investors is most investors who are experienced buy and sell based 100% on this number. Right? Like, there's no, let's show you 20 properties and see which one feels at home. There's no, oh, I don't like the paint color. Like, if this formula works, they tend to buy it, which is something that I've always enjoyed because I'm impatient, right? Like, I like to be able to have a conversation with you and say, hey, Heidi, tell me what you're looking for as an investment. All right, tell me about the cap rate you're looking for. Tell me about, the buy box. So a buy box for an investor is, what do I like to have in my investment portfolio, right? So there are some investors that like single family site built. There are some investors who like manufactured, and then there are some that like multifamily. But if I know that Jen likes to buy a site built house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, that cash flows or has an ROI around 6%, and I can find a way to get this deal to 6%, I know, call Jen, I know she's going to buy it. Because it starts being like this simple issue of math. Does everyone sort of track with me? So, I'm going to take the same numbers from this and plug it into just a different equation, right? So, if I know that my ARV is $250, and the rehab cost is $25,000, and my wholesale property is, or price is $187,500, I'm going to plug all those into my equation. Then I'm going to say $1,000 for title fees. If you want a more robust number, you can call the title company and ask. Say, hey, what do you charge me for title costs? Then I'm doing 6.5% selling cost, right? So I'm thinking 6% for the listing and like 0.5% for repairs, things like that. Things that, bins or items, utilities, things that just didn't come up before. So all in, that puts me at $229,750. 250 less 229,750. Estimated profit $20,250. So if you've got an investor, you can run this same calculation for them. If you're knowing that whenever they buy, they're typically looking for, let's say, $15,000 profit, boom, this property would work for them. If you know they're looking for home runs only, they want 30,000, so you save yourself some time, you don't even pitch it. When I first started on this, I made a lot of sort of gut decisions. Ooh, this one looks right, this one feels right. And that's just not a great way to do it. What is better is to have an objective measure that you're looking at every single time. On the buy and hold scenario, for people who are feeling scared, what I generally recommend is committing maybe to having 6 months of expenses in an account, right? If your tenant doesn't pay for 6 months, it's less of a big deal if you're quickly capitalized. It's more of a big deal if you don't have any money coming in and you're paying a mortgage, right? So there are ways to control for risk that help sort of help you sleep at night. And I think there's this sleep at night factor that ends up being really, really important too. The other thing I get sort of frequently is, well, I just don't have that much money, right? They're like, you know, Isabelle, that's all well and good, but I just don't have that much money, right? And if you get a very, very good deal and you're sort of looking at how can I do it on very little money, the ways to do it are, number one, you can get hard money on it. Is everyone familiar with what hard money is? It's I go to a private lender, I say, hey Jen, I have this deal. Jen checks out the deal and says, actually, that does look like a really good deal. I would be willing to fund it. Here's how much you would have to put in. Normally it's 10 or 20% instead of 100%. And then she funds the rest of it. And the recourse, if I don't follow through or the deal doesn't go right, is she gets to keep the property, right? So she's excited about it because it was a good deal to begin with. And then I put 20% down. So she's going, all right, well, my risk feels negligible now, right? Because there's an additional $20,000 of equity in that property. So that's what a hard money lender does. It's typically not based on credit score. It's typically not based on credit history. It's only based on the house as collateral for the property.
Where do you find
So that's one potential play if you're doing a flip, something like that. Or I've seen people do wholesales before, which is buy something from a wholesaler and put it directly on the MLS. Typically, you're looking to do that if the house is relatively clean, right? Like you found a deal, it's relatively clean, you're just bringing it to market, but you think you're going to be done in maybe 90 days. Hard money is a great way to be able to sort of bring it to market, make a quick buck, call it a day. The other thing that I have done historically that I like, because it's a really small bet, is seller financing. So how that looks or feels is I would buy a house for say 50,000. Typically you're looking at a manufactured property in this case, right? So I would buy a house for say 50,000. I would say, Jen, I will sell this house to you for $25,000 down, $1,000 a month, and then, a term of whatever the rest of that payment would be. So in that case, I have an investment that pays me $1,000 a month, has a 9.9% interest rate on it, and I only put $25,000 into the deal. So where initially, maybe I would have had to pay $50,000 for a rental property that would pay me $1,000, I've decreased my bet. So if I have less money, and I'm concerned about getting into the game and having it maybe be risky, what I could potentially do is I could risk less money by selling the property to Jen, and now I'm only in for half of what I would have been in for before. So that's actually where I have moved probably 50% of my investing to. So if you were to look at my investment portfolio, what you would see is about 50% rental properties and about 50% seller carried. And when I'm buying something, normally I'm buying it at an inexpensive wholesale price. I'm then offering it seller carry with a substantial down, and I'm selling it for some amount more than what I paid for it. So, oh, go ahead, sorry. No,
Are
yes.
you turning around and selling your notes or holding on?
I'm holding the note. So you could sell the note, and because of the way that I'm underwriting them, they should be worth almost exactly what the note is worth. But I'm typically holding them because for me, to get $1,000 a month for the next 20 years is really interesting. And the 9.9% interest rate on air is really interesting, right? Like if I bought a property for 50 and I'm selling it for 75, I now have a $50,000 note for which I paid $25,000, and I'm getting a 9.9% interest rate on top of it. So it's a good investment for me. Typically what I'm looking at is, because of the low amount of money I have in, I'm getting like a 20% cap rate when I'm doing those. So if you can tell me of another place where you can get a 20% return on something while having so little equity in, I would be so interested. You come talk to me. But I like the idea that I would place a small bet with a significant upside, and if I'm wrong, the amount I'm wrong is pretty capped, right? Like, so that's my other thing, right? Like, if I'm making an investment bet, I bet at the low end. Because if you look at who can afford everything as like a bell curve, there are a lot of people over here. There aren't so many people who can afford $1 million house, right? So I look at it and I go, you know what? To have $25,000 in, probably I'm not going to get burned on that. Even if the buyer just never pays me anything and they walk and I have to take the property back, well, now I'm $25,000 in, and I can either sell it again or I can keep it as a rental property for which I paid $25,000. I like that better. I view it as less exposure. And right now, we're just in a weird time in the market. It might keep going up because of inflation, or the interest rates might go up and then prices would have to stabilize or go down, right? But because neither of us know